The Fisherman and His Secret. It is said that in ancient times there lived in a coastal village a fisherman named Yusuf, known to all as the man with open hands. Every morning he would go out to sea before dawn and return with his boat loaded with fish that he sold at the market. But Yusuf had a habit that puzzled many. He never kept all his earnings. Every afternoon, when he closed his stall, he would walk through the streets looking for those in need and would give away coins, food, or whatever he had in his hands without asking for anything in return. His wife Layla observed this with growing concern. She was a practical woman, raised in a family of merchants where every dirham was counted twice. At first, she tolerated Yusuf's generosity, thinking it was a passing phase, something he would do to earn the town's respect. But months passed and then years, and Yusuf continued giving away more than he saved. One night, after watching her husband hand over a full bag of coins to a widow with 3 children, Layla could no longer contain herself. She waited until they were alone at home and said to him in a firm but trembling voice, "Yusuf, how long will you continue like this? You give as if the sea were inexhaustible and your nets would never break. What will happen when a bad season comes? What will happen when we are the ones who need help?" Yusuf looked at her with those calm eyes that so confused her and replied, "Layla, the sea has given to me since I can remember, and every time I give, I feel that the sea returns double to me. I do not fear scarcity because I trust in the one who fills the oceans and feeds the birds without them sowing or reaping." Layla sighed deeply. It was not the first time she had heard such answers. "Birds eat worms from the ground, Yusuf. We need a solid roof, decent clothes, and food secured. Faith does not pay debts or repair broken nets." But Yusuf did not change. He continued fishing by day and giving by afternoon. The poor of the town began to wait for him as one waits for rain in the desert. And not only the poor from his village. Travelers from neighboring towns also arrived, who had heard of the generous fisherman who never left anyone without help. The situation reached a critical point when a terrible storm lashed the coast for 3 consecutive weeks. The sea became a furious beast that allowed no fishermen to go out. The boats remained moored at the port, and families began to suffer. Yusuf could not fish either, but he still continued giving away what little he had saved. Layla watched in horror as their household reserves diminished each day. "Yusuf, stop, we're running out of everything," she shouted one afternoon when she saw him give their last bag of flour to a crippled old man. "If you continue like this, we'll soon be begging for alms ourselves." The fisherman stopped, looked at his wife, and for the first time in a long while, a shadow of doubt crossed his face. That night, he could not sleep. He wondered if Layla was right, if his generosity was nothing more than imprudence disguised as virtue. But at dawn, when he heard the call to prayer, he whispered a plea. "Lord, if I have erred, guide me. If I have acted well, sustain me. Do not allow me to doubt your generosity." When the storm finally ceased, Yusuf discovered that his boat had suffered severe damage. The nets were destroyed and the mast cracked. He had no money to repair it. For the first time in his life, the fisherman had no way to earn a living. Layla wept bitterly. I warned you 1,000 times." Yusuf looked for work wherever he could. He began carrying sacks at the dock, repairing others' nets, doing any task they would pay him for. His life had changed radically, but he never complained. Even in his poverty, if someone asked him for help and he had even a piece of bread, he would share it. One afternoon, while resting under a tree near the cliff after an exhausting day, he heard a desperate shriek. As he approached, he saw something that left him paralyzed. A small cave on the cliff's slope was collapsing, and between the falling rocks, a creature was trying to escape. Without thinking twice, Yusuf climbed among the unstable stones, ignoring the danger. His hands bled as he moved rocks aside and finally managed to pull out a strange animal, something between a serpent and a lizard, with scales that shone like pearls under the evening sunday. He carefully placed it on the grass, and when he was about to leave, the creature spoke. "Wait, son of Adam." Yusuf stepped back in amazement. The creature slowly transformed until it became a young man of noble appearance, dressed in robes that seemed woven from liquid light. "Do not fear. I am Malik, prince of the inhabitants of the hidden world. You have risked your life to save mine, and that is a debt that cannot remain unpaid." The fisherman, still trembling, could barely articulate a word. "I seek no reward. I only did what anyone would have done." Malik smiled sadly. "That is not true, and we both know it. My people have observed humans for centuries. Most would have passed by or would have tried to capture me to sell me. You risked everything without expecting anything. That is why I will give you a gift that very few mortals have received." If you're enjoying this story and want to continue discovering what extraordinary gift Yusuf received, leave me a comment telling me what you would do in his place. The prince approached Yusuf and placed his hands on the fisherman's temples. A sensation of intense heat ran through his body, as if 1,000 needles of light pierced his mind. "I have granted you the gift of understanding all the languages of creatures that do not speak the human tongue. You will hear the birds, the fish, the beasts of the field, and the smallest insects. Their secrets will be your secrets." Yusuf opened his eyes, completely amazed. "But why do you give me this?" Malik slowly moved away, his form beginning to fade. "Because a generous heart deserves eyes that see beyond the visible. But listen well to this warning. You must never reveal this gift to anyone. The day you do, your life will extinguish like a candle in the wind. Keep the secret in the deepest part of your heart." And he disappeared. Yusuf remained alone on the cliff, wondering if everything had been a strange dream caused by fatigue. But when he began to walk back to the village, he started to hear things he had never heard before. The sparrows in the trees were discussing where to find the best seeds. The seagulls above his head were complaining about the unfavorable wind. A spider in its web was murmuring about the patience needed to hunt. It was not a dream. It was absolutely real. During the following days, Yusuf began to experiment with his new gift cautiously. One morning, while working at the dock repairing nets, he heard two dolphins conversing near the shore. One said to the other, "Today there is an enormous school of tuna passing through the northern bay. They will head south at sunset." Yusuf looked up. He knew that bay. It was a difficult place to reach, but if what the dolphins said was true, any fisherman who went there would have the best catch of his life. However, his boat was still damaged. Then he had an idea. He approached an elderly fisherman who had always been kind to him and said, "Omar, if you let me use your boat this afternoon and accompany me, I will give you half of everything we catch." Omar, who was already tired and thinking of retiring, accepted more out of compassion than hope. They sailed to the northern bay and waited until sunset. Just as the dolphins had said, a massive school of tuna appeared. The nets filled so much they almost broke. They returned with such an abundant catch that the whole town was surprised. Omar was euphoric. "Yusuf, you have the eye of a true master fisherman. How did you know where to go?" Yusuf simply smiled. "Intuition, friend. Just intuition." He sold his share of the catch and was finally able to repair his own boat. He returned to the sea, but now with an advantage that no other fisherman had. He listened to the seabirds indicate where the schools of fish were. He heard the fish themselves talk about where they were moving. His catches became legendary. Within a few weeks, Yusuf recovered everything he had lost and more. Layla observed this transformation with a mixture of relief and confusion. "How is it possible that you suddenly have so much luck?" she asked him one night. Yusuf chose his words carefully. The sea is generous with those who know it, Layla. I have learned to read its signs. But Layla was not foolish. She knew that something had changed in her husband, something deeper than simple luck or skill. She observed him talking to animals when he thought no one was watching, noticed him stopping to listen to birdsong with unusual intensity. There was a secret, and she was determined to discover it. Meanwhile, Yusuf had not changed his nature. Now that he was prospering again, his generosity multiplied. But he learned from his previous experience. Instead of simply giving money, he began buying land and building workshops where the poor could learn trades. He established a common fund where needy families could request interest-free loans. He created a network of aid that not only fed people for a day, but gave them tools to feed themselves for life. The village began to transform. Those who once begged now worked. Those who once suffered now had hope. And everyone blessed the name of Yusuf the fisherman. But Layla was not satisfied. She saw money flow toward others and feared that history would repeat itself. One night, after watching Yusuf donate a considerable sum to build a new well in the town, she confronted him. "I need to know the truth, Yusuf. Where does this sudden luck come from? What has changed?" Yusuf felt a knot in his stomach. He remembered Malik's warning. "Layla, the only thing that has changed is that I learned to trust more in divine providence." "Don't lie to me," she exploded. "Something happened that day at the cliff. Since then you are different. You talk to animals as if they respond to you. You know things you shouldn't know. Trust me. I am your wife." Yusuf felt the weight of her words. He wanted to share the truth with her, wanted her to understand the extraordinary gift he had received. But Malik's voice resonated in his mind. "The day you reveal it, your life will extinguish like a candle in the wind. I cannot tell you, Layla. Not because I don't trust you, but because there are secrets that do not belong to me to share." Layla turned away with tears of frustration. She felt excluded, betrayed by her own husband's silence. And in her pain, she began to make decisions that would distance her even further from him. Months passed, and the tension at home grew. Yusuf continued prospering and helping, but the wall between him and Layla grew ever higher. One afternoon, while Yusuf walked through the market, he heard two parrots in a cage arguing. One said to the other, "The merchant who has us plans to sell all his spices before the next festival. He knows that a huge caravan is coming from the east and prices will triple." Yusuf paid attention. If that was true, there was an opportunity to make a smart investment. He used part of his savings to buy spices at the current price. And just as the parrots had said, when the large caravan arrived, demand skyrocketed. He sold everything with an extraordinary profit. But this time he made a mistake. In his enthusiasm, he mentioned to Layla, "I knew prices would rise. The birds told me." He said it jokingly, but Layla did not take it that way. Her eyes lit up with understanding. "The birds told you. Yusuf, can you understand animals?" The fisherman realized his mistake too late. He tried to laugh. "It was a figure of speech, Layla. Don't take it literally." But she had already connected the dots. All the pieces fit together now. His extraordinary luck, the conversations he seemed to have with creatures, the impossible knowledge about where to fish or what to trade. "It's true, isn't it? You have some kind of power, and you don't want to tell me." Yusuf shook his head. "Layla, leave it alone. There are things that are better not to know." But she was obsessed. During the following weeks, she secretly followed him, observing every interaction he had with animals. She saw him stop to listen to bees, nod when birds sang, change direction after observing fish behavior. Every piece of evidence confirmed her theory. Finally, one night, she confronted him with everything she had discovered. "I know your secret, Yusuf. You can understand animals, and that is what has given you all this wealth. Why do you hide it from me? Don't you trust your own wife?" Yusuf felt the world stop. Malik's warning resonated like thunder in his mind. Layla, listen to me carefully. There are secrets that protect, not exclude. If I confirm what you think, if I say the words you want to hear, my life will end. It is not a game or an exaggeration. It is a price I must pay if I reveal what was entrusted to me in secret. Layla stared at him, trying to discern if he was serious or if it was another evasion. Are you telling me you would die if you tell me? Exactly that. She remained silent for a long time. Part of her wanted to believe him, but another part, the one that had grown up distrusting pretty words and ethereal promises, thought it was just another way to keep her on the sidelines. If you really loved me, you would trust me. A marriage without secrets is a true marriage. Yusuf felt deep sadness. A marriage where one dies for revealing something is not marriage, it is a sentence. I love you, Layla, but I cannot give you what you ask. The gap between them became an abyss. Layla began to manage household finances with an iron fist, fearing that Yusuf would give everything away again. She took control of properties, businesses, every coin that came in, and the more she controlled, the more she distanced herself from the man she had known. One afternoon, Yusuf was sitting on the seashore when he heard two crabs arguing under the rocks. One said to the other, "The tide will bring a shipwreck tomorrow. There are boxes full of fine fabrics and amphorae of oil. They will be on the North Beach at dawn." Yusuf considered going, but then thought of Layla, of how she would use any new gain to exercise more control. He decided that instead of seeking the shipwreck himself, he would tell some poor fishermen from the town so they could benefit. He did so, and the next day, 3 humble families found treasures on the beach that changed their lives. Layla found out and was furious. "We could have had those riches. Why do you always give away what could be ours?" Yusuf looked at her wearily. "Because what I give always returns multiplied, Layla. But what I accumulate with greed only brings weight to the heart." That was the last straw. Layla made a drastic decision. She went before the village judge and demanded that Yusuf cede all his properties to her. She argued that he was an irresponsible man who gave away the family patrimony without consideration. She presented witnesses who confirmed his constant donations, and she asked to be granted total control of the assets to protect the family's future. Yusuf could have fought. He could have argued, brought his own witnesses, defended his honor, but he was tired of fighting, tired of hiding his secret, tired of living in a house where love had turned into distrust. Before the judge, he said simply, "Let it be as she asks. I cede to her all properties, all businesses, all wealth. I only ask to keep a small plot of land by the sea, where I have built a shelter for poor fishermen. That land I have declared as waqf, land dedicated to charity, so it cannot be sold or claimed by anyone." The judge was surprised by Yusuf's docility, but accepted his terms. Layla left the court feeling victorious. Finally, she had absolute control. Finally, she could live without the fear that her husband would give everything away. Yusuf moved to a simple cabin next to the shelter he had built for fishermen. He lived among them, shared their modest food, mended nets, and told stories at sunset. And although he had lost everything materially, he felt a peace he had not experienced in a long time. One night, while sleeping, he had a dream. Malik appeared before him with a serious expression. "Yusuf, son of Adam, you have protected the secret with your life. You have chosen poverty over revelation. That has more value than all the gold in the world. Your test has ended." Yusuf woke with tears in his eyes. He did not know exactly what that dream meant, but he felt that something had changed. Meanwhile, Layla now lived in a large house, surrounded by servants and luxuries. She had used Yusuf's wealth to expand businesses, make smart investments, and multiply the patrimony. But every night, when she closed her eyes, she felt an emptiness that no comfort could fill. She missed the simple conversations with her husband, missed his calm laughter, missed even his incomprehensible acts of generosity. One day, she decided to build a new palace, something that would make her status clear to everyone. She hired the best architects, imported marble from distant lands, decorated every corner with gold and silver. When the palace was almost finished, she organized a grand celebration to inaugurate it. The night before the celebration, Layla walked through every room of the palace, feeling proud of what she had achieved. This is what is achieved when wealth is well managed, she thought. Not by giving it away to poor people who will never improve. But that same night, the earth began to shake. An earthquake shook the region with a violence that no one remembered. And Layla's palace, built on soft ground near the cliff, began to crack. The walls collapsed, the roofs fell, and within minutes, the entire building slid down the cliff into the sea. Layla barely managed to escape, but was paralyzed watching years of work and accumulation disappear into the waves. Not only the palace, but also several of the warehouses where she kept valuable merchandise were destroyed by the earthquake. In a single night, she lost more than half her wealth, and what remained had to be spent on rebuilding, paying debts, compensating injured workers. Within months, Layla went from being the richest woman in the village to having practically nothing. She found herself alone, without the palace she had dreamed of, without the businesses that made her proud, without the jewels that adorned her. Those who had once flattered her now avoided her. Those who had once sought her favor now ignored her. And for the first time in her life, Layla experienced what it meant to have nothing. She wandered the streets aimlessly, not knowing where to go. She passed by the fisherman's shelter that Yusuf had built and saw people entering and leaving, sharing food, laughing together, helping each other. For a moment she considered entering, but shame stopped her. For 3 days she slept in the streets, eating what some compassionate strangers gave her. Finally, her pride broke, and she headed to the shelter. There she found Yusuf working on nets alongside other fishermen. He saw her arrive, dirty and defeated, and without saying a word got up and guided her to his cabin. He prepared hot food for her, gave her clean clothes, offered her a place to rest. There were no reproaches, no "I told you so," no satisfaction at her fall. Only compassionate silence and unconditional help. Layla cried that night as she had never cried before. She cried for everything she had lost, but above all for everything she had wasted when she had it. "Forgive me, Yusuf," she whispered between sobs. "Forgive me for not understanding." Yusuf sat beside her. "There is nothing to forgive, Layla. Life teaches us in its own way and time. I too have learned." In the following weeks, something extraordinary happened. Layla began to work alongside Yusuf at the shelter. She helped cook for the fishermen, mended nets, organized supplies, and for the first time she understood the joy that her husband had always felt in giving. It was not irresponsibility or madness. It was a different way of seeing the world, where wealth was not measured in coins, but in grateful smiles and transformed lives. One afternoon, while working together repairing the cabin's roof, Layla said to him, "Yusuf, I never asked you again about your secret, and I no longer want to know. I have learned that there are mysteries that do not need explanation, only respect." Yusuf smiled. "Thank you, Layla. That means more to me than you can imagine." That night, Yusuf heard the seagulls announce a great storm that would come the next day. He prepared the shelter, secured the boats, and warned everyone to take refuge. The storm arrived with fury, but thanks to the preparation, no one suffered serious damage. When the storm passed, an elderly fisherman asked him, "How did you know something so terrible was coming?" Yusuf simply pointed to the sky. "The signs are always there for those who know how to look." Layla watched him from the cabin door and understood that although she would never know her husband's secret, she had learned the most important secret of all, that true wealth is not in what you accumulate, but in what you share. Not in what you keep with fear, but in what you give with love. Days became months, and months became years. Yusuf and Layla lived the rest of their days in that simple cabin next to the fisherman's shelter. They never became rich again in the conventional sense, but their lives were filled with a different abundance. Deep friendships, clear purpose, inner peace. Yusuf continued using his gift to help others, but always discreetly, always protecting the secret that Malik had entrusted to him. And Layla became the silent guardian of that mystery, never asking, always trusting. If you made it this far, and this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel for more stories that will make you reflect on what truly matters in life. In a village forgotten by time lived a man named Karim, whose heart had turned to stone. It wasn't always this way. There was a time when he smiled and embraced his wife Amina with tenderness. But something broke inside him the day his first daughter was born, and then the second, and then the third. 4 more times the scene would repeat. A baby's cry, the midwife's voice saying, "It's a girl," and Karim's face transforming into a mask of rage. 8 daughters in total. 8 disappointments, according to him. 8 reasons to raise his hand against Amina, each time fate denied him the son he so desperately desired. Amina learned to recognize the sounds of approaching violence. The door slamming, heavy footsteps, the thick silence before the storm. She learned to protect her belly when she was pregnant and to protect her daughters when she wasn't. The girls grew up hearing their mother's screams, seeing how their father looked at them with contempt, feeling that their existence was a mistake they had to compensate for by working without rest. The eldest, Layla, was barely 12 years old, but her hands were weathered like those of a 40-year-old woman. The others followed her in line, each carrying responsibilities that didn't correspond to their age. The village knew the situation, but no one intervened. In those places, what happens inside a house is sacred, even though within those sacred walls the worst injustices are committed. Some women murmured in the market, some men shook their heads in disapproval, but no one did anything. Karim was respected because he had land, because his voice was strong, because men like him always find a way to be respected, even though they don't deserve it. Amina never thought about leaving. Where could a woman with 8 daughters go in a place where women alone don't survive? Besides, in the depths of her battered heart, she still held on to the hope that Karim would change. She prayed every night, not for herself but for her daughters, that someday their father would look at them with love instead of reproach. But the years passed, and the situation worsened. Karim began to drink. He began to disappear for days at a time. When he returned, the violence was worse. Then Amina became pregnant for the 9th time. She was 42 years old, and her body was exhausted. The village doctor warned her that it was a high-risk pregnancy, that she needed to rest. But rest was a luxury she couldn't afford. The older daughters worked in the field, the middle ones took care of the younger ones, and Amina continued cooking, cleaning, carrying water from the well, even though her belly grew and her back screamed in pain. Karim, upon learning of the pregnancy, said something that froze everyone's blood in the house. He gathered the family one night and spoke with a coldness that was worse than his shouting. "This is the last chance. If another girl is born, I'll leave and you'll never see me again. You'll live alone, without my protection, without my name. We'll see how you survive." The youngest girls began to cry. The oldest clenched their fists. Amina only lowered her head, feeling the weight of a threat she knew he would fulfill. The months of that pregnancy were the darkest. Amina developed complications, bleeding that frightened her, pains that doubled her over. The daughters took turns caring for her, sacrificing their own rest. Layla, the eldest, stopped going to school definitively to take care of the house. No one asked her to. She simply did it because someone had to. If this story is touching your heart, stay, because what's coming will change the way you see things. And if you want more stories that make you reflect on life, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss any. One night, when Amina was in her 7th month of pregnancy, the pain became unbearable. It wasn't labor pain, but something different, something terrifying. The girls ran to fetch the doctor, but he lived far away, and the night was dark. Karim wasn't home, as usual. Layla took charge. She boiled water, prepared clean sheets, held her mother's hand while she screamed. The younger sisters prayed in a corner, terrified. The doctor arrived 2 hours later. His serious face told them everything they needed to know before he opened his mouth. "The situation is grave," he said. "The baby is in the wrong position, and your mother has lost a lot of blood. She needs to go to the city hospital immediately." But the city was 3 hours away by vehicle, which they didn't have. The doctor went to find help while the girls stayed by their mother, watching her grow paler with each passing minute. Amina, in a moment of lucidity between the pain, called her daughters. She gathered them around her bed and spoke to them in a voice so weak they had to lean in to hear her. "Listen carefully," she said. "If I don't survive this night, promise me you'll take care of each other. Don't let anyone separate you. You're all you have in this world. Your father is lost, but you have something he'll never have. You have true love among yourselves. That will make you stronger than any man." The girls cried and told her not to talk like that she was going to be fine. But Amina continued, "And if the baby survives, take care of it too. It doesn't matter if it's a boy or girl. It will be your brother or sister and will need you. Don't repeat your father's mistakes. Don't teach it to despise anyone." Layla, through tears, promised she would take care of everyone. The others nodded, forming a circle around that bed where their mother fought for her life. Finally, a truck arrived. The doctor had gotten a neighbor to take them. They carefully lifted Amina in, and the older girls went with her. Karim still hadn't appeared. Throughout the journey to the hospital, Amina drifted in and out of consciousness. In her lucid moments, she only repeated one thing: "Take care of the baby. Take care of the baby." The girls clung to those words like a lifeline. At the hospital, the doctors acted quickly. An emergency cesarean was necessary. The complications were severe. They explained to Layla, who at 12 years old had to sign papers as if she were an adult, that there was a possibility her mother wouldn't survive the surgery. Layla signed with a trembling hand, praying every prayer she knew. The operation lasted 3 hours. 3 hours in which the sisters hugged each other in the waiting room, imagining the worst scenario. Other families looked at them with pity. A nurse brought them hot tea that none of them touched. Time moved like thick honey. Then the doctor came out. His expression was unreadable. The girls jumped to their feet, hearts in their throats. "Your mother is alive," the doctor said, and they all exhaled the air they'd been holding. "She's very weak and will take time to recover, but she's alive. And the baby is alive too." There was a moment of silence. Then the inevitable question: "Is it a boy or girl?" The doctor smiled slightly. "It's a girl, a small but strong girl. Against all odds, she's breathing well." The sisters didn't know what to feel. Relief that their mother and the baby were alive. Terror about what Karim would do when he found out. They had been through so much fear that night that they had no tears left. They were able to see their mother an hour later. Amina was pale, with tubes connected to her arms, but her eyes lit up when she saw her daughters. The baby was in an incubator nearby. She was tiny, with wisps of black hair and closed fists. "We'll call her Noor," Amina whispered. "Light, because she has brought light in the darkest night." The girls nodded. though in their hearts they knew the true darkness hadn't arrived yet. Karim finally appeared the next day. He didn't ask about his wife first. His first words were, "What was it?" Layla, who had aged 10 years in one night, looked him directly in the eyes and responded, "A girl. Mom almost died bringing her into the world, but both are alive. That's all that should matter." Karim's expression was like watching a building collapse. First anger, then disbelief, then something that could have been pain but quickly transformed into cold resentment. He didn't shout, he didn't hit anything, he simply turned around and left. The girls didn't see him for 2 weeks. In those 2 weeks, something changed in that family. Without Karim's threatening presence, the house breathed differently. The girls worked together with an efficiency that surprised the neighbors. Layla organized everything like a general. Schedules to care for mom, shifts to attend to baby Noor, field and house tasks distributed according to each one's capabilities. The neighbor women began to help too, bringing food and baby clothes, offering advice. A network of female solidarity wove itself around that family. Amina recovered slowly. The doctors said it had been a miracle she survived with the amount of blood she had lost. But the real nurses were her daughters, who cared for her with a dedication that melted hearts. They fed her with a spoon, changed her bandages, took turns, so she was never alone. And with Noor, they were equally devoted. The tiny baby became the center of love for everyone. Each sister had her special way of holding her, singing to her, making her smile. When Karim finally returned, the house was in order, better than when he was there. He entered expecting to find chaos and desperation, ammunition to justify his contempt. Instead, he found a home functioning perfectly without him. The food was ready, the house clean, the girls worked in harmony, and in the center of everything, Amina, still weak but alive, holding baby Noor. He said nothing that first night. He sat down to eat in silence while the girls watched him warily. After dinner, he retired to his room. The following weeks were strange. Karim was physically present, but absent in everything else. He didn't help, but didn't hinder either. He didn't talk about leaving, but didn't participate in the family. He was like a ghost inhabiting his own house. The girls got used to his presence-absence. They continued with their routines. Layla remained the pillar, but everyone contributed according to their age. Even the youngest, 6 and 8 years old, helped by setting the table or entertaining Noor when the older ones were busy. Amina, though still weak, directed from her bed, giving instructions in a soft voice, thanking each small gesture from her daughters. Then, something happened that no one expected. One night, Karim was sitting on the porch as he had done every night since his return, smoking in silence. Noor began to cry inside. All the sisters were busy, some finishing field tasks, others preparing dinner. The crying continued. Karim put out his cigarette, stood up, entered the house, and for the first time in his life, took one of his babies in his arms. Noor was so small she fit in his enormous hands. He looked at her, this tiny creature who hadn't asked to be born, who wasn't to blame for not being the son he desired. The baby's eyes opened and looked directly at him. And in that moment, something broke inside Karim. It wasn't an instant transformation. It was more like a crack in a dam that had been holding back too much pressure for years. He rocked the baby awkwardly. He didn't know how to do it correctly. He had never held any of his daughters before. But Noor stopped crying. She stayed looking at him with those immense eyes that babies have, eyes that see people's souls without judging. Layla entered the room and froze upon seeing her father holding her youngest sister. She was going to take her away, fearing he would hurt her, but something in Karim's expression stopped her. "She's so small," Karim said, and his voice sounded different, softer, more human. They were all this small. It wasn't a question, but a realization. Layla nodded slowly. Yes, Dad. We were all this small, and we all needed you to hold us like this. Karim didn't respond, but didn't let go of the baby either. He sat in a chair, still holding Noor, and something in his posture was different. The other sisters began to enter the room, one by one, drawn by the unusual scene. They all remained silent, watching. No one dared to move or speak, fearing to break whatever was happening. Finally, Karim spoke again. "I've been a terrible man," he said, and the words seemed to cost him physically. "I've hurt your mother. I've hurt all of you, and I don't even know why. Because I wanted a son. As if a son were more valuable than a daughter. As if a person's worth depended on what they have between their legs, instead of what they have in their heart." The girls looked at each other, not knowing how to react. Was this real? Their father, the man who had despised them their whole lives, was admitting his mistake. Layla, always the brave one, took a step forward. "Why now, Dad? Why after 9 daughters do you start to see this?" Karim looked at the baby in his arms. "Because I almost lost your mother. Because I saw how all of you worked together to keep this family going when I wasn't there. Because I realized I've been living my life waiting for something that never came, and meanwhile, I lost everything I already had. I've been a fool. A cruel and blind fool." It wasn't tears that ran down his cheeks. It was decades of misunderstood pride dissolving. The daughters didn't run to hug him. Forgiveness doesn't work that way. But something changed in the atmosphere of that room. A small door opened, a possibility of something different. If you're feeling this story is transforming you inside, don't leave yet. And if you want to keep seeing stories that help you understand life better, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any. The following days were cautious. Karim began to get up earlier, helping with tasks he previously considered women's work. He didn't do it well at first. He burned the bread, carried water incorrectly, clumsily tried to help with the baby. The girls watched him with distrust, waiting for him to become the cruel man they knew at any moment. But the days turned into weeks, and the change persisted. One afternoon, while Layla was working in the field, Karim approached her. She tensed her shoulders, preparing for, she didn't know what. But he just stood beside her and began to work in silence. After a while, he spoke. "Your mother told me you left school to take care of the family." Layla didn't respond, didn't know what to say. "That wasn't right," Karim continued. "A 12-year-old girl should be studying, not carrying the weight of an entire family on her shoulders. That was my job, and I failed." Layla stopped working and looked at him. "And now what, Dad? Are some pretty words going to erase years of screaming and hitting? Are they going to erase the times you made Mom cry? The times you told us we were a disappointment?" Her voice broke. "How can I believe you when my whole life you taught me I was worth nothing just because I'm a girl?" Karim received those words like the blows he deserved. "I can't erase the past, Layla. I wish I could. What I can do is try to be different in the future. I know it's not enough. I know you may never forgive me. But I need to try, because you, all of you, deserve a father who values you. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be that father, even if it's too late." There was no dramatic reconciliation. There were no hugs or declarations of instant love. But there was a small nod from Layla, an acknowledgement that at least he was trying. And sometimes the attempt is the first step. Months passed. The change in Karim was gradual but constant. He began to spend time with each of his daughters, really getting to know them for the first time. He discovered that the second, Yasmin, had talent for mathematics. That the third, Fatima, could sing beautifully. That the fourth was a natural artist. That the fifth had a sense of humor that could brighten the darkest day. He got to know his daughters as people, not as disappointments. With Amina, it was more difficult. The years of abuse had left deep scars. She watched him with a mixture of cautious hope and residual pain. One night, after the girls fell asleep, he sat next to her bed. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he told her. "I don't know if I could forgive myself if I were in your place. But I want you to know that every day I regret it. Every day I see your face and remember the blows I gave you, the tears I caused, the years I stole, and every day I promise to be better." Amina listened in silence. Then she spoke, her voice firm despite her physical weakness. "Forgiveness isn't something given overnight, Karim. It's earned with actions, not words. Your daughters and I have survived your cruelty. Now you'll have to prove you deserve to be part of this family we built without you." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a possibility, and that was more than Karim deserved. The most notable transformation was seen in how he treated Noor. The baby who had been the straw that broke the camel's back became his redemption. He spent hours with her, singing to her badly, but with love, telling her stories, simply holding her. The older sisters joked that Noor was the spoiled one, but they said it affectionately because they saw that their father's love for the baby was healing something in him. One day, in the village market, an acquaintance said to Karim, "What a shame, 9 daughters and not a single son. It must be hard." Before, Karim would have agreed, perhaps even complained, but that day he looked the man directly in the eye and said, "It's not a shame, it's a blessing. I have 9 extraordinary daughters who are stronger and more valuable than any son I could have had. And if you can't see the value in women, then you're the one who should feel pity, because you're missing out on the most beautiful half of humanity." The man was left speechless. The entire village heard about that conversation. Some murmured that Karim had gone crazy. Others, especially the women, smiled with approval. The change in him didn't go unnoticed. A year passed since that night when they almost lost Amina. The family gathered to celebrate Noor's first birthday. There was modest cake, decorations handmade by the sisters, and for the first time in years, genuine laughter filled the house. Karim looked around, at Amina, still fragile but smiling, at his 9 daughters of different ages, each unique and beautiful in her own way. He stood up and raised his cup. "I want to make a toast," he said, "to Noor, who in her first year of life taught me more about love than all my previous years. To Amina, who endured the unendurable and still raised extraordinary daughters. And to my 9 daughters, each of you a gift I didn't know how to appreciate, but now treasure more than my own life. You are my pride, my legacy, my redemption, and I'll spend every day I have left making sure you know it." Tears flowed freely that night, but they were different tears from those of previous years. They were tears of healing, of forgiveness slowly earned, of a family rebuilding itself on the rubble of pain. Not everything was fixed. Scars don't disappear just because someone apologizes. But there was hope, and sometimes that's all you need to move forward. Layla, now 13 years old but with the wisdom of someone much older, watched her father with Noor. She remembered all the times she had wished he would hold her like that, speak to her with that tenderness. Part of her still hurt for what she never had. But another part, the part that was learning to heal, was glad that her younger sisters, especially Noor, knew a different father. It wasn't fair that she had suffered while the younger ones received love. But life is rarely fair. What mattered was breaking the cycle. Years later, when all the daughters had grown up, they would tell this story to their own children. They would talk about the father who was cruel, the near-tragic ending, and the transformation that followed. But the most important thing they would teach is this: a person's worth isn't determined by their gender, their appearance, or others' expectations. It's determined by the love they give, the strength they show, and the capacity to rise after being knocked down. The family was never perfect after that. Karim had moments where his old temper tried to surface, but his daughters, empowered by their new dynamic, didn't allow it. They confronted him, reminded him of his promises, and he, ashamed, corrected himself. It was continuous work, a daily choice to be better. Amina eventually forgave. She didn't forget, but she forgave, because holding on to so much resentment was too heavy to carry. They found a new way to be together, not like they were before, that was impossible to recover, but as something new, something built on honesty and conscious effort. The village that once murmured about the tragedy of the family without sons eventually saw something different. A family of strong women, each contributing to their community in meaningful ways. Layla eventually returned to school and became a teacher. Yasmin an accountant. The others found their own paths, and Noor, the ninth daughter who almost cost her mother's life and triggered her father's transformation, grew up knowing she was loved unconditionally. This isn't a story with a perfect ending because real life doesn't have perfect endings. It's a story about how people can change when they finally see the harm they've caused. It's about the power of a mother's unconditional love and the resilience of daughters who refuse to be defined by their father's rejection. It's about second chances earned with real effort, not just empty words. If you made it this far and this story made you reflect on the value you place on the people in your life, subscribe to the channel to keep seeing stories that change your perspective.